Hey there, wire weaver. Today we're going to talk about splicing in a new weaving wire. We're going to do this on 3 different weaves so you can get a sense of how to adapt this technique to any weave that you're doing. It's a really great tip that every wire weaver should know, so let's get started. My name is Wendy and I'm the wire weaver behind Door 44. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about splicing a new wire into your weave. Now, what happens commonly is your middle of the weave and your wire breaks. What do you do? Well, you don't have to take it all out. You can easily splice in another wire, and I'm going to show you how to do this seamlessly so that you can't even tell that you ever had to make a splice in the middle of your weave. So the thing to pay attention to here when you're doing this is you want to pay attention to exactly where in your weaving process you are. So if you see here, I've got about 10 pattern repeats of modified Soumak weave. And I started with single wraps. So this double pass over both wires is the end of my pattern repeat. So this is 1 pattern repeat, 2, 3, and so on. So I just finished with a double pass, and this wire is coming out in the front. So to continue this weave seamlessly, I'm going to take another piece of weaving wire, and I'm going to put this tail between my core wires, going the opposite direction of my original tail. So you see how I did that? This new wire is coming out the back, old wire is coming out the front. And you just want to slide that wire up in there and then hang on to that tail with your fingers. We finished that double wrap, and now we're going to start in with single wraps. So we're going to go once around this bottom core wire and once around the top core wire. And now you see that pattern is going to continue seamlessly. And we'll deal with this wire in a little bit. We're going to leave that there for now. So then you just want to go ahead and continue your weave. And once this is all done, it's going to look completely seamless. You're not even going to be able to see how those wires, you won't even be able to tell that there was a splice there in the middle. And I'll also show you in another video, we'll talk about how to break your wires cleanly so that you don't have any pokey bits coming out of your weaves that'll be uncomfortable or that, could snag on things. So there you go. We're just going to continue weaving in pattern. And as you can see, that weave is completely seamless, even though that wire is coming out in the middle there, and you can see a little bit of a gap there, but that's something we can clean up. We can just press those wires together, compress that weave, and that's going to pretty much go away. So once these wires are removed here, you're never going to be able to tell that you ever spliced a wire in there. In this example, we're going to splice a new wire into a basic figure 8 weave. Now this is a very basic weave. I didn't even do a double wrap, which is common with this weave. It's just a single figure 8 wrap. Now the thing that's tricky with this weave is you got to remember and pay close attention to exactly where you finished off. So you can see here, I finished off with the top wrap going around this weave. So my next move is going to be to wrap around this lower core wire. So what we're going to do, and this is just like the modified Soumak, and this works on any weave, you always slide your new weaving wire between your core wires, wherever you're going to do your splice. And remember, if you have multiple wires, in most weaves, and especially with this weave, because it's not very stable, it's always better to get your splice as close to the middle of a weave as possible. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 weaving wires or core wires, try to do your splice as close to the middle of that weave as possible. Now, in this case, we just have 2 core wires, and this will work. It's just not as stable and predictable. So usually when I'm working on 2 core wires and I'm doing a figure 8 weave, I just try not to break my wire or have to do a splice if I can avoid it, because again, this isn't a super stable weave, and this is one that, especially with the single wrap version, it can unravel pretty easily on you. But we're just going to go ahead and do this splice just like we did on the modified Soumak. So we threaded our new weaving wire in the opposite direction of the old one. Old one's coming out the front, new one's coming out the back. And then you just want to hang on to that wire tail and continue your weave exactly where you left off. So we finished with a wrap around the upper core wire. We're going around the bottom core wire now, and then the top and the bottom, the top, the bottom. And remember, with this weave, you're just doing a figure 8 around your core wires. So that's all it is. Super simple, basic weave, and one that, this is a really nice weave for pieces where you want a really soft, organic look. This weave gives a lot of definition to your core wires, which isn't true with all weaves. So I like to use this one on pieces where I have a very soft, organic style. This is one that I use on all of my twig jewelry, and it's a great weave. Again, it's not super stable, it's not very structurally sound, and that's because the wires cross between the core wires in the middle, and you just don't have, a lot of wraps here. Plus you've got some gaps between each of your wraps. You have, basically the width of your weaving wire between each wrap. But there you go. That's going to be a seamless splice, and when we break off these wire tails, you won't even be able to tell where that splice is. Now the nice thing about this weave is, because the wires do cross in the middle, it actually gives you a little bit more leverage when you're breaking your wire tails. So we'll talk about that in the next video, where I show you how to break your wire tails. But yeah, this weave especially gives you very clean breaks with no wire sticking up above your weave at all. So there you go, how to splice, seamless splice on a figure 8 weave. The next weave I wanted to talk about today is one that I don't use very frequently. This is more of a wire wrapping style weave, and as you can see, the pattern consists of 3 wraps around a single core wire and then 3 wraps around both core wires, and then you just repeat that pattern. So I have almost 4 pattern repeats here. Well, I do have 4 pattern repeats, and I just started the beginning of the 5th. So let's say that your wire breaks while you're doing this weave, and this is a common weave. The reason I'm including it is because it is a really common weave. This is one that Nicole Hanna uses a lot, if you're familiar with her tutorials. And it's a little bit trickier to do a seamless splice with this style of weave, so I just wanted to use an example of this to give you an idea of how to do it in case you ever run into this situation. So notice here that let's just say my wire broke as I completed the first wrap of that next pattern repeat. Now this is ideal. You always want to do a splice if you can. If you're in a situation where you have wraps around a single wire, that's where you want to do your splice, because that single wire is just going to be a tighter wrap than anything that's going over multiple core wires. So if you can, start in the middle of the single wraps. And in this case, we have 3 single wraps per repeat. So I've just got 1 here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add in my splice wire. And again, you just add that wire to the back. Grab a hold of it with your fingers while you're weaving. So we finished 1 wrap. This is going to be 2 and 3. And then we'll carry on with our double wraps. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. And you'll just continue your weave just like that. So again, anytime you have a situation where your weave crosses over double wires, so this is true for modified sumac, it's true for this style of weave, you never want to do your splice on the double weave pass. You always want to do it on the single weave passes. And in this case, you can see we're going to end up with 3 coils. They sit nice and neatly together. Once these wires are trimmed off, you'll never be able to tell that there was a splice there. So that's it for doing seamless splices on some various weaves. And again, it doesn't matter at all if you have multiple core wires, you have more than 2, just do your splice as close to the middle as you can, or in an instance like this, do your splice wherever you have single wraps. And that's it. That's how you do a single splice on 3 of the most common weaves that you're going to run across. Now, the modified sumac and figure 8 weaves are weaves that I use frequently in my designs. This weave, again, is one that you're going to run across anytime you're working on other designers' tutorials. This is a pretty common weave, and there's lots of different variations of this. You know, you can do 2 and 2, you can do 3 and 3, you can do, you know, 4 and 2, or 3 and 1. There's lots and lots of different variations of this wrap, but that's how you do a seamless splice. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's quick tip. If you did, be sure to subscribe and also hit that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload new videos. I'll see you again next week. Until then, go make something beautiful.